Hi all, it's Rebecca Michael. I'm back with another video. This time it's on pathological lying, and I'm going to get into the intro of that right now. It's a chief trait of narcissism and psychopathy, or any of the cluster Bs. Well, maybe not so much borderline, but for sure, narcissism and psychopathy. And the reason I'm getting into this, it's on a spectrum of severity, is because these are extremely toxic people, and they have what's called a disease of hiding the truth, basically under a false mask, a false persona, which they have a generic one, and they can cold read us pretty well. They have cognitive empathy. They know who and what they're targeting for different purposes. And their entire purpose is predatory, which means exploitation and usury, as I spoke of in the last two videos on entitlement and envy, malice, and entitlement rage, if you want to take a look at those. But anyway, this is another cardinal sign. Lack of empathy, lack of conscience, lack of genuine remorse, although they can feign that. But it's a disease of hiding once again. Their pathology under first a generic mask that works on the general population, but that they're targeting, and then customized to your own traits, your own interests, your own morality. I'll get into that later. The false personas, but it's part of the lying. Okay, so all psychopaths are narcs, but not all narcs are psychopaths, although the moderate to high ones have psychopathic traits for sure. There's very few of them that don't. Okay, so they all have in common pathological envy, entitlement, pathological lying, like I said, low empathy, low conscience. So they basically, what this means is, pathological means there's no cure. It's hardwired into the brain. It's on autopilot. And that's because of habitual choices to lie. And I'll get into the reasons they do that later in this video. But they chronically lie even when telling the truth would be more advantageous for them. And there's some sayings in the field by the experts that if they, narcs or psychopaths, are talking, they're lying. Or manipulating, which is same difference. I'll get into that later in another video about the manipulations. But the moderate, it's on a spectrum. So if they're talking, they're lying. If they're at least moderately on the narc spectrum of severity, and if they're breathing, they're lying. If they're on the psychopathic or extreme end of the narcopathic scale, if they're even breathing. So what that means is, what you see is not who they are, or what they're presenting to you is not who they are. Right from the persona they're presenting, like I said, it's a disease of hiding. It's incurable. There are some behavioral modifications that they can make, but nothing of and nothing that's going to change their low empathy, their low conscience, etc. That's all hardwired into the brain over a long time of pathological lying, for example. There's a study that's done about liars' brains, that they can actually see it in the brain now, that it's hardwired into the brain. You might want to take a look at that. I posted it at my Narcs Be Gone Facebook. You might have to scroll down for that a bit. There are many narcs that are psychopaths that are high functioning, and so they usually go for the high power positions, if they are. And so law, medicine, politics, as you know, corporate heads of businesses, but many of them are low to mid functioning. So they go full range, every type of occupation, every type of, both genders, age, none of that makes a difference. It has to do with the hardwiring in the brain. So basic types of lying they do is they revise and edit history to suit themselves. They embellish. They exaggerate. This one here they do a lot, which is lies by omission. So, for example, they're famous for being false victims. They appeal to the pity, the empathy of people in order to exploit them, so, or ensnare them, or get something from them. Everything they do is for self-gratification or self-gain of some kind. So lies by omission are hugely important, because if they're going to be a false victim, they need to, I'll get into this in another video more, but they need to reverse the, they're the abuser, but they need to reverse that to the victim, the real victim, and make themselves the false victim instead. So they'll just tell you the part of the story, for example, where a victim may have reacted to abuse, and even quite abusively, having been provoked severely, and so really it's self-defense. But they will turn that around, and they will omit what they did for that to have gone down, for example. So that's an example of lies by omission. But there's lots of things they won't tell you, such as their actual marital status, their the truth about things like their failures in life, their estrangements, things like that. And then they do lies by commission, which are flat out lies of things. They make things up that didn't happen, or add things that didn't happen, or subtract things, or whatever. And their false personas are lies. So this is what they mean. If they're breathing, they're lying. Even what they're presenting to you is in their persona. And I'll get into the false personas in another video. But for now, I'm trying to keep this as short as possible because there's a lot to get through. The reasons they lie like this chronically, pathologically, well, it's habit for one thing. They're on autopilot for that. But their track records are, the older they get, there's more failures and estrangements and failed relationships, etc. So it's obvious why they'd be lying about that. For validation, false validation. But they do this for power and control reasons. It's self-serving. And some of the ways they feel power and control is through duper's delight. So it's a way for them to feel superior over you because you don't know the truth. You don't know the full truth. If they're lying by omission, commission, and any of the other ways I've mentioned, you're not going to know the truth, the full truth. And so right there, they feel superior because there's things that they know that you don't. And they're quite smug about that. Manipulative tactics, these are all deceitful ways that they get around your fully informed consent. So you're not fully informed as to what is going on. And they get duper's delight out of that too. Like they've They've pulled one off on you, or maybe several things. They do it to ensnare targets for exploitation, abuse. They do it to, they need scapegoats in order to pour out their own toxic shame on by being the false victim. So somebody or something has to be the scapegoat. They're huge blame shifters. This is another really big red flag. Blame shifting and scapegoating. So the red flags to watch out for example, I'm trying to get through this quickly, are their actions and words don't match up over time. You see incongruencies and inconsistencies. The thing about truth is that it's consistent and it's congruent. So you'll see incongruencies and inconsistencies in their stories. There'll be holes in their stories, so it doesn't add up the longer you know them. If you find yourself, here's another red flag, feeling like playing detective, like your gut's going off, that things aren't adding up here, that's a red flag. That means that our gut is typically, especially if we value the truth higher than anything else, and we're willing to face even ugly, painful truth, well, your gut is going to be warning you that things aren't adding up here and you don't trust them. You're starting to not trust them. And that's a good sign. But we need to listen to our gut. So this is what to do. We need to listen to our gut. And concerning them, if you start getting this, you need to start vetting everything. And this is not, if you have to deal with them, you need to vet everything they say and everything they're doing, because everything they say and do has a self-serving motive to it. And you need a safety exit plan as soon as possible, because this isn't curable. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening.